What does it mean to lead your relationship, to lead your wife or lead your family? And what does it mean for men to lead in a way that's not dominating or trying to force her to be whatever it is that he wants her to be? Most women will resist a guy trying to be the leader in the relationship, especially if he says, hey, baby, let me be the leader. She'll always resist it. So what does that actually mean to lead versus being dominant? And why is it that women are always asking guys to be the man or to lead in the relationship? In my experience, there's been, a lot of frameworks, a lot of books, a lot of online courses, a lot of everything, YouTube videos, and this is one included, where it's like, how do we determine what it is that the woman's wanting in the relationship? How do we figure out what it is, the kind of leadership qualities that she's looking for? And what does that make sense? Do you even want to lead? Like, why not just let your wife lead? And what is it they're actually looking for? Well, let's see if we can break this down. From my perspective, what I've noticed is that she's really only looking for two things. So if I put masculine leadership right here, we've got two things. One, she's looking for survivability. Why? Because back in the day, tigers or usually other humans would come and kill or take her or rape her or take her children or whatever. So survivability, just not dying of hunger. And the second one is connection. Connection, this is more related to spirituality as well. Nobody lives in a vacuum. Humans are very social creatures. So we've got two things here, survivability and connection. What is survivability? Now, survivability is what she's going to find attractive. This is where your attraction comes from. And this is where your heart comes from, the heartfelt parts of the relationship. And you got to have both. If you just have heartfelt, you end up with friend zone. If you just have attraction, you end up with this guy here that she doesn't talk about. So you got to have both of these things. You got to have both attraction and heartfelt energy. So, but what does it mean to lead the relationship? It means both of these things, right? Survivability and connection. Survivability is going to mean coming down to things like demonstrating strength, courage, being able to demonstrate mastery of your environment, and being able to be sociable with other men and women. So these are the main ones here. And then also it extends into the relationship by showing, demonstrations of strength, meaning emotional self-control. Structure in a relationship. How are we going to operate in the day-to-day? And then also coming out of here is safety, right? She's going to want to see safety. So part of this is part of the connection, part of both of these. Shakes out the other side. But really what you should probably focus on in your relationship are just these three things. One, so like for instance, what does that mean? Emotional self-control. So we have self-control here. This means your ability to control yourself in the face of intense stimulus. In other words, you're not going to fly off the handle, act like an unhinged maniac. When some other guy comes around, you're going to stop and you're going to think, right? Even if you could whip his ass, you're going to stop and think about it. Or if you can't whip his ass, you still be courageous enough and demonstrate what you got to. But the whole point is can you have still intense self-control in the face of an intense stimulus? And this also means like her emotions as well. Can you react? Can you respond to her versus reacting? Can you respond to what she's saying versus just reacting? Most guys can't even do this. And so they already fail right there in the beginning of the relationship. They don't have the emotional capacity to actually be able to hear what she's saying. He's just going to go into reaction mode, and he's going to get defensive. If she says something like, hey, you didn't take the trash out. He's like, yeah, but I was busy. I was doing these other things. She's like, I don't need to hear why you didn't take the trash out. I just want to hear that you're going to get it done and the pivot necessary to make sure this doesn't happen again, right? She's looking for a pivot. Or let's say that your woman was flirting with another guy and you freak out and you react and you say, hey, stop cheating. That's pretty intense, right? So we're like, hey, don't do that. And she's like, and she doesn't take responsibility for it. Why? Because you haven't set up something else called structure. What is tolerable and how do we operate in this relationship? Now, for a lot of women, if you're there, you say, hey, this isn't tolerable. Like, this is intolerable. And you would say, this isn't going to happen. We don't have a relationship if this happens. Problem is most guys tolerate it, so there's no structure along the lines, right? She gets a little emotionally upset. He gets defensive. He drops all of his structure and tolerates a bunch of stuff he shouldn't be tolerating. And this makes her lose respect because he didn't have respect for himself. And then because he's lost respect, there is no of this going on. She can't be with a guy she doesn't respect. So he's already done it twice. He's already messed up twice, right? One, he has demonstrated no self-control because he became an unhinged maniac when a guy was flirting with her. Two, he didn't provide the structure and say, hey, this kind of behavior isn't tolerable in our relationship. And three, there's no safety there for her to operate under because he's reacting from an emotional space. So safety can be in a few different areas here. We're going to say here, we got financial, emotional, physical, and there's probably some others. But I would say these are the main ones, and this is the emotional one that this just did not happen here. There's no emotional safety here. He can't have a conversation with her and say, hey, what's going on? Why are you talking to this guy? Why? Because it's not a place for her to say, well, because I'm not really happy in this relationship. She didn't feel safe to say it. Now, that doesn't mean that she would have been truthful, but in this scenario, that's what's going on. So she's looking for you to be emotionally, have a lot of self-control. Most women are looking for this. After she's already found you attractive. Okay, so let's just preface this here. If she already finds you attractive and she likes you and you're in a relationship, this applies. If she doesn't find you attractive, none of this matters. You're not really in a relationship with her, you're in a friendship or a friend zone. If you're attractive, she wants to see you being able to exercise self-control over your emotions, over your sexuality, and your daily habits. She wants to see that you are more committed to your goals and what you need than she is. You are the man, so you are the one who has emotional self-control. Not to say that women can't have emotional self-control, but the feminine has no interest in having self-control. The feminine wants to be able to just be free. That doesn't mean your woman's just gets a free reign to be that way. Everybody has a proportion of feminine and masculine qualities. And it's up to the women to cultivate their masculine to an extent, and it's up to the men to cultivate their feminine to an extent, and to cultivate both of them, really, to have a healthy relationship. So everybody's of a proportion of, there's a percent here and there's a percent here. So when I say the feminine, I'm talking about like in a 100% situation, she's just going to flow. Now, I'm not saying that your woman's ever going to be in this state, but you've had places where you've been in that state too, right? I'm not saying that she's going to stay like that all the time. I'm just saying in a vacuum, that's what it is. Just like in a vacuum, the masculine is always going to be present, like fully present. But he's not going to be. He's going to be distracted. He's not always going to do it. He's going to want to flow sometimes. He doesn't want to be just the observer, be present. So she's going to find, okay, if I already find you attractive and I'm your wife, I want to see that you have some self-control. I also want to see that you're going to provide structure in this relationship, in this household. So in the way we communicate, in decision making, and in our boundaries and limitations. In other words, you're not going to put up with a bunch of bullshit. When we communicate, you say, hey, this is what's happening, this is where we're going, whatever. Decision making, or when we communicate, say, hey, when we talk, I want you to speak nice to me. I don't want you to be an unhinged lunatic. Let's have a constructive conversation. And if we can't have a constructive conversation, then we're not having a conversation, right? Boundaries and limitations. And always the infamous, hey, where are we going to go to eat? And you say, I don't know, baby, wherever you want to eat. Right now, you're abdicating decision making. She wants guys that are decisive. She wants decisiveness. This goes back to this game of survivability. Most of these things do, but you'll see that there's some cross, and it can be complicated at times, but there's some cross amongst all of them. So are you able to be decisive? So even if you don't say, hey, where are we going to, even if she asks where you want to go for dinner, you say, well, we got the choice of Mexican or Chinese. Which one do you want, right? Or if you say, honey, I don't want to make a decision tonight. I want you to make the decision, right? You have now led the conversation. You created the structure around how the decision is going to be made. And then the last one is safety. So the safety can be, again, like financial. In other words, can you produce? Physical. Can you fight? Or can you put up security in such a manner to where you protect the physical safety? Or hell, even financially, can you hire it out? And then the last one is emotional safety. This one's more connection. And so this one here requires you to have self-control more than the rest of them. Because this one right here, where she's emotional, you're not going to want to hear it. Most of the time, when a guy is in a relationship, he don't want to hear all her problems. What he wants to do is come to a conclusion and offer her solutions. Why? Well, he thinks he's doing her a service. Oh, baby, it's just this. Just do this. And she's like, no, you're not hearing me. He's like, what do you mean? No, I heard you. Here's the solution. What are you talking about? She's like, no, you're not hearing me. He's like, yeah, I did. I just heard you just clearly. This is what you're supposed to do. And she's like, no, damn it. You're not feeling what I'm feeling here and living with me in that space. And so what he ends up doing is he comes to a conclusion, and this comes off as condescending. And she's like, stop mansplaining to me. And he's like, but I am a man, and I'm explaining stuff to you. And so then they go around and around in the circle. So he comes off as condescending, and like she can't handle her own business, when really what she's doing is she just wants him to connect with her and feel where she's at and just be in that space. Like, for instance, when you have a dog and you're real sad, you're sitting on your front porch, and you're making your country music song, and he just comes and sits next to you. Well, the dog's not trying to solve your problems. He's just hanging out in the space with you, just letting you know that he's there. It's a lot of what she's trying to do here. Or she'll tell you about some big things that are happening, weighing on her, and then you lose your shit. Like, imagine she comes to you and she says, you know what, I'm just not finding you attractive anymore, and I'm starting to think of other men. Do you stay calm and be like, okay, interesting. Tell me more about that. What's going on? Or do you lose your fucking shit and go, oh my God, what do I got to do to change? Holy shit. Well, that's the problem. Most guys can't handle strong emotion. And so most guys hide from this shit. They hide from strong emotion because they can't handle their own strong emotions. And so because they can't handle their own strong emotions, they can provide no container for what she's got going on. And so she doesn't feel taken care of. In fact, the opposite happens. Because most guys can't handle their own emotions, she then has to become the container. And what is happening is now she's all worried about your emotional state all the time. She never has a space where she can just be herself and let loose and be emotional. Why? Because she's always worried about how it's going to affect you, which means she's the one who always has to exercise emotional self-control. And in this place, she never gets to relax. This is one of the big common problems that moms have. Guys are like, whoa, she abandoned me. Oh, it's all about the kids all the time. Where's my space? And she's like, what are you talking about? You're the man. So this is mainly, if the attraction's already there and you're already in a relationship with her, then these are the big three. Each one of these could warrant an entire course in and of itself, which I'm not going to get into here in this video. I think I've talked enough about it. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. If you're watching this, Just start applying those things. All right, my brother. So, emotional self-control is always the number one thing. Do you have emotional self-control? And I'm not talking about the kind of emotional self-control where you're just like stoic, you don't feel anything. It's not emotional self-control. That just means you're a robot. It doesn't mean that you're feeling anything. And in this place, your woman's going to say, you feel like a ghost around me. And typically when guys go and they start dating, the woman says, well, you want something, but it's not me. I don't know what it is. I can't feel you. I can't connect with you. That's a guy who's shut himself down completely emotionally. If you can't handle your own emotions, if you don't know what's going on with yourself emotionally, and you can't really navigate yourself out of a bad situation, you're never going to be able to do that for her. And if you can never do that for her, she's never going to open up to you emotionally. If she can't open up to you emotionally in the deepest parts of her heart, you'll never feel that soul connection with a woman that you really want. And she's not going to open up to you emotionally if you can't provide structure. If you can't provide emotional self-control, you can't provide structure in your life, how can she trust that you have anything in order in your life? You see, your relationship is a microcosm of how you're doing the big picture of life. That's why relationships are like one of the best places to try to grow yourself as an individual, as a man. If you can grow yourself in a relationship where it's usually the hardest, most in the fire pit that you can go to, then you can usually navigate yourself out of any other situation in your life. And the last one is safety. Can you provide safety for her? You know, a lot of guys, they say, my wife she says she doesn't trust me. Yeah, she doesn't trust you because you can't control yourself emotionally. You don't provide structure for yourself, and you don't know how to emotionally handle a container of your own emotions. Why would she gift you with hers to try to handle? Yeah, she doesn't trust you, nor should she. So if you want to learn more about this, go ahead, watch another one of my videos. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this, go ahead and subscribe and hit the like button below, and I'll see you in the next one.